A little intro first. Writing these pieces, as I've been doing, has been challenging, as I've had to dig up memories and emotions that had long ago been shoved into a dark, hidden corner of my heart. It's especially difficult because I have kids now, the same age as when some of those stories take place for me or my siblings. Looking at my kids while at the same time reflecting on what the past held for me at the same age taps deep into that emotional bank and often brings me to tears. I don't want to see my kids live through anything like that. Yet at the same time, I would never, ever trade my life and experiences for anything else. With pain, mistakes, lows, also comes highs, joy, glory, and has been a huge part in contributing to the beautiful and blessed life I have lived. In fact, the life arc that I've been through, most can't fathom. This is pretty much what this particular piece is about: heartbreak and love. So with that, let's get started. This piece was composed on the birthday of a dead man, someone that had caused a ton of pain within our family, but never out of malice. I called him my father, but he was actually just my stepfather. He was the biological father of my 3 sisters. Sisters that I eventually took custody of and raised myself while finishing my engineering degrees, MBA, and pursuing my career. While he wasn't my father, he was the one who raised me and did treat me like a son. On the birthday in question, the youngest of my 3 sisters shared with me a number of letters and drawings he had sent her. The love and quirkiness displayed in these letters brought back a flood of memories. Memories that can be hard to come to terms with due to their contrast in nature. It's hard to understand how someone who loved his family so deeply could also be the root of so much of its pains. He certainly wasn't a bad man like my younger brother's father was. It's very difficult for me to accurately reconstruct the memories from such an early age, but what I can remember about when we left my brother's father, it involved him waking up in a drunken stupor. He was completely naked and there was blood, but I don't remember where it was from. It was all over, though. My mother was standing over the top of him holding a hatchet. Later on, he told my brother, while recollecting the incident, that he thought he had already on his deathbed when he woke, having been disemboweled. But that wasn't the case. She had actually not hurt him. She told him that he would never touch her again, and that if he ever came after them, us, she would bury that hatchet in his stomach. And with that, she dropped the hatchet beside him, and we left while he was still quivering in terror. I'm not exactly sure what happened between those two, but years later, when all of us kids were taken into custody by the state, my brother's father came and was able to take him. And during that time, either his father or his new wife convinced my brother to claim that he was sexually molested in our household. And then, by the time he was 14, my brother was doing crystal meth in the living room with his father. From then on, it was all downhill. And my brother spent basically the entirety of his adult life in and out of jail or prison. Guilt over the lies he was coerced into telling, combined with the life it led to, have left him a pretty broken man, mentally and emotionally. Broken to the point that I've been unable to help him. He just called me from prison for my birthday and is excited about getting his GED and working on his welding certification. I'm always the hopeful optimist. Maybe someday he'll be welding Kabuki strength products. My brother's father, he was a bad man. My sister's father was not. He was a kind and loving man, yet he left both gaping scars on those around him and at the same time is a big part of who I am today. And that's the contrast that is so difficult to grasp. How can you share so much love, yet leave so many scars on those around you? He was a bit of a crazy genius, with his ability to write, draw, philosophize, play guitar. He had close to 150 IQ and played with a number of well-known musicians in his day. When he began dating my mother, he left the music scene because she made him stop using heroin. Well, that and my mother's penchant for, ditching society and living in the woods probably made both those activities difficult to maintain. We spent a huge amount of time together when I was a child. He taught me to fish and hunt, which we had to do a lot of to keep food on the table for the family. Poaching deer to feed the family was an important duty and required skinning, gutting, and quickly quartering it up, which I was taught. And if you want to tell me about your negative views on the morality of hunting or legality of poaching, yeah, go fuck yourself. We needed to eat. I remember watching one winter when I was in first grade as both my father shrunk away from lack of food. Yet there was always food on the table for us kids. But he went without. He spent time with me working on drawing, sculptures, jewelry making. We did a lot of stuff like that together. We all have remnants of his handcrafted items, my sisters and I. As I grew older, we often read the same novels so we could talk about them, and he would provide me examples of poetry and writing when I had writer's block. It's hard to describe the love and time he invested in us. Without regular work or being involved in normal society at large, he had more time to do that than most. Despite the love and time invested in his kids, he was also just flat out crazy. He would climb a tree, for example, and hide out with a rifle when my mom's parents came to visit, just in case they tried to pull something. After I had left home, he had once kicked out one of my sisters in the middle of a snowy winter because he was convinced she had stolen his favorite cereal bowl. He would do things to play mind games with us frequently in order to teach us life lessons. I'm pretty sure the following story was one such instance, although I'm also sure it was financial realities of the situation played a pretty heavy role in it as well. But one October, he found free rabbits as pets in the nickel ads, and each of his kids got one. Dad and I built a pen out back for them, and we spent the next couple of months raising and playing with the rabbits. Thanksgiving morning came along, and Dad told me that we would not be able to afford a turkey, so the two of us had to go out back and twist the necks on all the rabbits. We then proceeded to gut and skin them so Mom could cook them up for dinner. My sisters, they were bawling all day long. In fact, they still had dried tears on their faces when they sat down to eat dinner that night. But at the same time, they did note how good dinner was and cracked a few jokes about it, having clearly learned something about the nature of life and death. I also learned quite a bit about work ethic in the early years when he was busy logging and growing crops. I often tagged along with his work, especially when it was woodcutting. There was never an excuse. Work just had to be done. Interestingly, that entire time he was working with a broken arm. And over the 10 to 15 years of doing manual labor with a broken arm, the bones in the arm wore a huge gap with the vibrations of, running a chainsaw and general labor work. And that had to be fixed. And after that, in later years, he mostly watched TV and drank all day while doing sculptures or other artwork. I could tell you lots of stories about his crazy antics to fill the pages, but I'll just finish with the letters to my youngest sister. She was 12, turning 13 at the time, and I had not taken custody of her yet, only dealing with the older two at the time. He sent her regular letters and drawings from jail, the ones I spoke of, as she bounced around between friends' houses. But along with those letters of love was also large requests of a 12-year-old. He coached her to lie so that she didn't get taken away by the state while he was in jail. Our mother was gone at the time. He asked her to pull money from what little she made in the Youth Conservation Corps to pay the mortgage. to go to the house and recover all the precious items he had hidden around the house and property in case our mother came to steal them. You know, like the rocks hidden in the clothes dryer. I did mention he's crazy, didn't I? On one such trip, he ended up putting my sister in a pretty traumatic situation. During this period, our mother had a mental breakdown and had disappeared to Eastern Oregon for some time, and then Montana for a few years. But on this trip to the house, my sister found our mom. She was back and had boarded herself up into my old bedroom, like it was a freaky studio for herself. She was consuming her time by getting raging drunk and, well, burning our father's things. All my sister will tell me is that it was a bad and ugly. It was a lot to ask of a 13-year-old. I just can't attempt to reconcile how someone can give you so much time and love and yet do stupid things, like getting kicked out of your high school graduation for being drunk. How, despite his love, I still had to take his daughters from him because he was incapable of taking care of them himself. I am glad I got to see him again not too long before he passed away. While in Central Oregon, visiting friends, I decided to drive down and see him before heading home. He was still living in his mobile home we had lived in while I was in high school, the same one my mother had boarded herself up in my bedroom for a while. Most of it was converted over to growing pot. He was in a happy place with his simple life, where he could grab a couple beers and ride his bike over to a friend's cabin or down to the river to do some fishing. He never saw an issue with where he was at in life. He lived in the moment. He lived with passion, and he did live with love. It didn't matter that we may be living in tents in the woods. He was happy. He had his family around him, and he got to go out and go hunting. In one of his last sentences from one of his last letters, this is again about over 15 years ago, he wrote to my sister, and he said, "All I ever wanted was my family." And well, I guess I blew that. And with that, he passed into oblivion. My mother had grown to hate him. The last we heard from his large family was in the 80s, and none of them have ever inquired about him since. The only thing he had was his home, which the fire department decided to burn to the ground as practice since it was unlivable. He left behind my 3 sisters and myself, and the 4 of us all loved him dearly while recognizing his innumerable faults. He could barely take care of himself and only did so with the support of the state. He was unable to perform his duties as a father, yet we loved him. My sister took the last of his remains up to the mountain on his birthday, and in a stroke of sarcastic justice, spread them across the back of the ski mountains, since he hated both snow and skiing. I don't think I will ever understand the man, but without a doubt, he taught me to live with passion, love, and to enjoy the moment. Thanks for listening.